After a serial criminal returns to work to eliminate her mother, a teenage girl travels back in time to the day the first crime took place, joining her mother's group of friends to stop the criminal. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Totally Killer, from 2023. 36 years ago, 3 girls were found lifeless, each with 16 stab wounds, on their 16th birthday. On October 27, 1987, a girl named Tiffany was found eliminated in the garage of her home. 2 days later, on October 29th, it was Marissa's turn, who was found in an isolated cabin in the middle of the forest in exactly the same way. Finally, on October 31st, Heather was found lifeless in the parking lot of the amusement park. Because of his MO, the person responsible for this became known as the criminal with the 16 stab wounds, but for some reason, after Heather's elimination, he never attacked anyone again. After his crimes, the culprit became extremely famous and people started dressing up as him on Halloween nights. In the present day, on October 31, 2023, a teenage girl called Jamie is preparing for a party when her mother Pam invites her to spend the evening handing out sweets to the children. According to the woman, this time of year brings back terrible memories of the perpetrator of the 16 stab wounds. Jamie replies that the crimes took place several decades ago and that she knows how to take care of herself very well, since Pam made her attend self-defense classes from the age of 7. Knowing that she won't be able to convince her, Pam allows her daughter to go to the party, but says that her husband Blake will accompany her, waiting outside to bring her back. While her husband and daughter are away, Pam stays at home handing out sweets to the neighborhood. After a while, most of the treats run out and the woman closes the door to replenish her stock, but while she's doing this, someone dressed as the man with the 16 stab wounds appears and starts banging on the door. Thinking it's a young man wanting sweets, Pam apologizes to the stranger who pulls out a knife. Desperate, the woman locks the door and runs to the alarm to call the police. At the entrance, the criminal manages to get his arm inside the house and unlocks the lock, going after Pam, who is already prepared, and manages to take him down with extreme ease. With him on the ground, the woman takes out a hidden pistol and aims it at the intruder, but she doesn't have time to shoot and ends up being disarmed. Thinking his victim is defenseless, the attacker throws her onto the coffee table and tries to finish her off, but Pam manages to stop the attack and grabs the pepper spray from under the sofa. Taking advantage of the gap, she runs into the kitchen where she grabs a knife, and for some reason, the criminal just decides to back off. Suddenly, the suspect reappears at the back door and manages to knock Pam down, who fights back by plunging her knife into the intruder's chest. With the weapon stuck in his body, the woman tries to crawl away, but the man sticks the knife in Pam's calf and lands another 15 blows to her chest, returning to active duty after 36 years. When the authorities arrive at the house, an investigative journalist called Chris is following the investigations and starts broadcasting live. All this while Jamie watches from her bedroom. On the next school day, the girl goes to school where Principal Doug asks to speak to her, saying that Sheriff Lim has some questions. Extremely insensitive, the woman begins to accuse Blake of having something to do with the crime, as well as asking if Pam had any kind of relationship with Chris. Lim then reveals that the two had been exchanging messages and accuses Blake of having taken his wife's life out of jealousy. Extremely angry, Jamie calls the sheriff incompetent and tells her it's time for her to start working for real, then leaves. After school, Jamie goes to the abandoned amusement park where the school is organizing the science fair. There, the girl meets her friend Amelia, who is creating a time machine inside a photo booth, based on her mother Lauren's notebook of brilliant ideas. Curious, Jamie asks what is missing for it to work, and Amelia replies that she has been testing the Wi-Fi for the last few weeks, but that even with the GPS properly synchronized, nothing happens. Looking at the machine, Jamie realizes that the date set is the day of the first elimination in '87, and Amelia says that if they stopped the pursuer in the past, they would also save Pam. After school, Jamie goes home where she begins to feel watched. Even though she was afraid, she approached the closet, but just as she was about to open the door, Blake entered the room and she went back to bed. Jamie asks if her mother and Chris were close, and Blake reveals that Pam was collaborating with the journalist to find the murderer. Knowing this, Jamie goes to meet Chris and discovers that, after the last crime in '87, her mother found a note in the cupboard saying that she would be next. Since the criminal didn't set a date, Pam became obsessed with self-defense and suffered from fear for the next 36 years. When Jamie learns of this, she decides to go to the time machine and meets Amelia on the way. While she's telling her friend about her plan, the criminal appears and starts chasing her. Desperate, Jamie hides in the cabin, but accidentally activates the mechanism of the time machine, which ends up revealing her location to the masked man. Even though she's scared, Jamie starts fighting with the pursuer, who sticks the knife into the machine's panel. When the counter reaches 0, the device starts working and the girl travels back in time, ending up in the park in the year 87. Wanting to find her mother, Jamie goes to school where she pretends to be an exchange student from Canada. Because it's the 80s, the secretary doesn't ask to check the documents and just gives the class timetable. In her first physical education class, the girl meets Tiffany, Marissa and Heather, discovering that all the criminals' victims were best friends. During dodgeball, she discovers that the teenage Pam is totally different from her adult version, acting like a real idiot. After being knocked out by her own mother, Jamie decides to try and fit in with Pam's group and fails miserably. In the middle of the conversation, Tiffany says it's her birthday and invites everyone to her house for a party. Knowing that the crime is going to happen that night, Jamie goes to the police station where she tries to tell Sheriff Lim's father about what's going to happen, but obviously he doesn't believe him. Wanting to get help, Jamie remembers that it was Amelia's mother who created the time machine project and decides to go and talk to her. In the corridors, the girl tells Lauren everything that happens in the future and reveals that her daughter built the time machine based on her notes. To prove she's telling the truth, Jamie shows her cell phone and takes Lauren to see the time machine in the park. When they arrive at the place, Jamie says that the machine wasn't working, but that it turned on after the knife pierced the panel, indicating that it needed more metal conductors. In the present, the police begin to investigate Jamie's disappearance and Amelia tries to tell them about the time travel, but as Sheriff Lim doesn't believe her story, it's Chris who is interested in hearing her testimony. Back in the past, Jamie goes to Tiffany's party and catches future coach Randy disturbing Doug. For trying to help the future principal, Jamie ends up being seen as a nerd and is banned from entering the party, but she doesn't give up and decides to try to get in by another means. In the back, Doug tells them they can jump over the wooden fence and helps the girls. Inside, Jamie starts looking for Tiffany and catches her kissing Blake, her father. Noticing her confusion, Lauren explains that the two of them have been together since the prom, but that they keep cheating on each other and that the relationship should end soon. In order to prevent the crime from happening, Jamie goes to Pam's group and tries to convince them to call the police, but is kicked out by Tiffany once again. As she still needs to prevent the crime from happening, Jamie goes back into the house where she finds Tiffany and Blake fighting because she cheated on him with Ed, who is a famous singer in the future. When she realizes that Jamie knows Ed even though he's from another country, Tiffany decides to leave Blake and starts looking for the singer, disappearing once again. With only a few minutes to go before the crime takes place, Jamie goes to the group of friends and tries to explain that Tiffany needs help, but the girls don't listen and Marissa asks Randy to take her outside. This time Jamie is prepared and manages to defend herself, slamming Randy's head against the bench. With no one to stop her, the girl decides to go to the garage where Tiffany's body was found, but when she gets there, all she finds are two random students kissing. Seeing the scene, Jamie begins to wonder why Tiffany isn't there until she remembers that she talked about Ed being famous. Because of this information, Tiffany has taken a different course of action and is now in the bedroom with Ed. When they are about to kiss, the girl takes a break to go to the toilet, but when she comes back, Ed is no longer there. While looking for him, Tiffany realizes that someone is in the closet and approaches him, thinking it's the young man, but instead it's the criminal who comes out of the closet. Since she thinks it's the singer, Tiffany doesn't react and ends up receiving the first blow without having a chance to defend herself. With the girl wounded, the maniac struck her 15 more times, leaving Tiffany lifeless on the bed. Because of the loud music, no one hears the girl's screams and only Jamie knows what's going on. Desperate, the girl from the future runs around the house looking for Tiffany, but when she finally reaches the bedroom, she is already lifeless. Because of what happened, the party is closed and Jamie refuses to allow her mother to leave alone, accompanying her home with Lauren. On the way, Pam asks her how she knew Tiffany was in danger and Jamie lies saying she's a psychic. Now that she has won her trust, the girl says she needs Pam's help to prevent the other crimes and reveals that Marissa and Heather will be next. While they are talking, Jamie accidentally lets slip that Pam is going to be with Blake and she seems to like the idea, but as they are both still very immature, Jamie is afraid that the relationship won't work out and says that they should wait until after college. Afraid of what might happen, Jamie asks Lauren what will happen if her parents' relationship doesn't work out. The girl then says that if this happens, she won't just disappear like in fictional movies, but that since she was never born, there will be no future to which she can return. Lauren is late for class and leaves Jamie in the corridor with the other students. As they get closer, the girl realizes that they are talking about a girl called Trish and discovers that she is a colleague who perished in a car accident last year. After the conversation, everyone goes to the classroom where Jamie suggests that they spend Marissa's birthday in a very busy place, far from the cabin where her body was found. Just then, the teacher enters the room and asks Jamie to sit down with Damon, a rather reclusive student with several bizarre notes in his notebook. The next day, Marissa picks Jamie up from home and starts driving in the direction of what she says is her parents' condominium. During the trip, Jamie asks about Damon and learns that he is Trisha's brother and that he went mad after she perished. At this point, Jamie starts to feel tired and decides to sleep in the car, only waking up when the girls arrive at the isolated cabin. Confused, the girl remembers that there's a criminal on the loose and says they should go back to town. But when she tries to do so, Randy and Blake arrive with Lim in another car and they all decide to get in. As she has no alternative, Jamie locks all the doors and windows and tries to establish some rules, but none of them listen and they all go outside to bathe in the jacuzzi. While they're having fun, Jamie asks Lim how they can be so irresponsible and the girl replies that they're just enjoying the moment, thanks to the special brownies she made after taking some things from her father's evidence locker. Jamie finally realizes that they are high and decides to use this information to her advantage, telling them that there is pizza inside. Hungry, everyone goes inside and Randy thinks it would be funny to lock Jamie outside, leaving the girl alone to find a way in. Inside, the teenagers arrive in the kitchen and realize there's no pizza, but as they're completely out of their minds, they think Jamie has hidden it somewhere and start searching the house. Outside, Jamie is still looking for a way in when she notices that one of the windows on the second floor is open. As she's sure she locked it, the girl goes to Lim and tries to warn her about the intruder, but the future sheriff is totally out of mind and can't understand anything Jamie says. On the second floor, Randy goes to check if Heather is awake and closes the window that the intruder left open, leaving the room just as Jamie manages to climb up. Because of this, the girl remains locked outside and can only watch as the criminal comes out of the closet and turns on the stereo so that no one hears Heather's screams. Desperate, Jamie goes into the next room and knocks on the window where Pam and Blake are, finally managing to get into the house. In the next room, Heather wakes up to the serial criminal just standing in front of her and kicks him, giving her the opportunity to leave the room. Even so, the intruder continues to chase her and manages to knock her off the ladder, injuring her leg. Unable to run, Heather tries to crawl away, but is soon caught by the maniac and receives several knife blows. While the intruder is attacking the girl, Blake appears and starts exchanging punches with the criminal, but as he is unarmed, he ends up at a disadvantage and takes a blow to the shoulder. With her father wounded, Jamie appears and hits the masked lunatic twice in the head, causing a good amount of blood to run down his costume. Not satisfied, Jamie continues to hit the invader who manages to recover and traps her against the wall. With the man about to hit her future daughter, Pam appears and smashes a ceramic vase over his head. Completely shaken, the man escapes unscathed and kicks the girl in the stomach, as well as banging her head against the bedside table. With Pam unconscious, Blake picks up an ice pick and almost hits the maniac several times, who finally decides to back off. With things calmer, Jamie approaches Pam and sees that she's still alive, but we can't say the same for Heather. Back at the police station, Jamie shows the officers a piece of paper with the criminal's blood on it and tells them that they can now trace him through DNA, but since it's 1987, the American police don't use this method, and there's no database yet. With that hypothesis ruled out, the sheriff asks if anyone else knew they were going to the cabin and Blake suggests that the criminal didn't come from outside, accusing Lim and asking where she was. Angrily, the girl says she was scared and hid in the closet, but Blake continues to insist that she is guilty and Lim leaves. At school, Jamie meets Lauren who shows her that she has made a prototype of the time machine, but that it still doesn't work due to the lack of Wi-Fi, which at that time hadn't even been invented yet. Just then, Jamie decides to check her cell phone and discovers that the signal has somehow returned. Looking around, Lauren sees that the TV van is broadcasting a live news report and assumes that it is the antenna that has made the internet work again, but the journalist finishes the transmission and the signal disappears almost instantly. As soon as she realizes this, Lauren tells her that she can pick up the satellite signal and take her back home, but that she only has 7 more hours to do this, because at the end of that time, Jamie's cell phone will run out of battery and they won't be able to use GPS anymore. With little time left, Jamie says that she still has to save Marissa and that this will happen in the parking lot of the park, which is great news, since the TV always broadcasts the Halloween party at live. After Amelia's mother leaves, Jamie sees Damon stopping the van in the parking lot and decides to break into the vehicle to look for something suspicious, but ends up being caught by the young man. Seeing Jamie, Damon thinks it's a robbery and tells her she can take everything, but begs her to leave his video game tapes. Realizing that he is harmless, Jamie tries to ask a few questions, but Doug appears and interrupts them, asking them to go back to the living room. After class, Jamie goes to the park where Lauren tells her that the machine's power generator has broken down, and that without a good source of electricity, they won't be able to restart it. To get the energy, Jamie goes to an attraction called Quantum Drop and pretends to be from the town hall, asking to empty the place. After everyone has left, Lauren begins to modify the attraction to turn it into the new time machine. While she does this, Jamie meets up with the group of survivors and begins to draw up the plan, asking Marissa to lure the criminal to the horror doll's house. In the present, Amelia finally manages to recreate the time machine and asks Chris to fetch the metal conductor. Back in the past, Marissa walks towards the doll's house without realizing that she is being chased by the criminal. Once inside the attraction, the girl walks through the corridors and leads the serial criminal further and further into the center, trapping him without realizing it. While chasing Marissa, the masked man passes by one of the dolls that makes an extremely loud noise, which ends up scaring Jamie. Because of the scare, the girl drops a piece of metal on the floor, which gives away her location. Thinking it's Marissa, the man opens the door and starts attacking Jamie. To help her, Blake arrives from behind and manages to make the villain drop the knife, but is easily defeated by the criminal who steals his sledgehammer. With Blake's weapon in hand, the man chases Jamie into the room where Marissa is waiting. There, Randy comes up from behind and tries to hit him with the baseball bat, but the criminal manages to dodge and knocks him out with the sledgehammer. While the man is distracted, Jamie comes up from behind and sticks the knife in his back, but the criminal is so tough that he pulls the blade out as if nothing had happened. Using the same knife, the masked man advances towards Jamie and prepares to finish her off, but at the last second, Lim appears and thrusts a scythe through the villain's chest, causing him to lose his life instantly. Now that the criminal is gone, the group can finally remove the mask and discover that Doug was to blame for everything. At that moment, Pam remembers that the young man was Trish's boyfriend and Marissa says that he must have been seeking revenge for the sleepover. Confused, Blake asks what she's talking about and Marissa explains that on the day Trish perished, Tiffany had a party and they invited the girl to ask about the rumor that she was making out with a teacher. Trish obviously denied it and the girls started giving her drinks, figuring that if she was drunk enough, she would confess. After much insistence, Trish called Doug to tell him what had happened, but as she didn't want to wait around, she decided to leave on her own. Because of the drink the girls gave her, Trish ended up in an accident and lost her life. Upon hearing the story, Jamie is extremely disappointed with her mother and accuses Pam of eliminating Trish, but the girl denies it, saying that she was fighting with Tiffany at the time and that she wasn't there the day it happened. Confused, Jamie wonders why Doug wrote the note promising to eliminate Pam and shows her the paper, but before they can come to any conclusions, another masked man appears and slits Marissa's neck. Frightened, Lim pulls out her pistol and almost shoots him, chasing him as he tries to escape. Confused, Lauren says that this is a version from the future, but if they eliminated Doug, how could his version from 2023 be there? It turns out that it was Chris who eliminated the adult Pam, and now he's eliminated Amelia to travel back in time and finish Jamie off. On the other side of the attraction, Lim runs out of ammunition and is chased by the masked man, leading him to the rest of her friends. Desperate, everyone runs away while Lauren and Jamie go to the quantum drop. When they get there, Lauren says she's going to take the girl to the beginning of Halloween 2023 so that she can save her mother. Before turning on the machine, Lauren explains that while she is traveling, the attraction will spin extremely fast, generating such strong centrifugal energy that anything not in the center will explode against the wall. After the explanation, the two say goodbye and Chris goes in to try to finish them off. Still, Lauren manages to escape and the masked one advances towards Jamie, but ends up being surprised by Pam who jumps on his back. Even outnumbered, the girls are unable to defeat him and the three of them are thrown against the wall. As the speed isn't that high yet, Chris manages to get up and walks over to Pam, hitting her in the stomach with the knife. To save her mother, Jamie gets up and crawls to the dashboard of the attraction, opening the door so that Pam can be ejected from the quantum drop. Alone with Chris, Jamie asks about the note and discovers that it was he who wrote the message, all just to keep people interested in the story and gain views. Even with the speed of rotation increasing, Chris manages to break free from the wall and makes his way to the center of the machine, wrestling with the girl. To avenge her mother, Jamie manages to get the knife and sticks it in Chris's arm, but once again the object gets stuck in his body. Thinking that Jamie has no way of defending herself, the man says that she is now unarmed, but he couldn't be more wrong. At that moment, the girl pulls a nail gun out of Lauren's backpack and shoots several nails into the journalist's chest. With his wounds, Chris ends up letting go and is thrown against the wall by the centrifugal force, becoming just a cloud of blood after the impact. Alone on the quantum drop, Jamie keeps spinning faster and faster until she breaks the speed of light, only stopping when she returns to 2023. Back in the present, the girl rushes home to find her mother without a scratch. Just then, the grown-up Lauren arrives and asks to speak to Jamie alone. Outside, the woman apologizes for not being there when she left the quantum drop and that she calculated the wrong time, arriving 30 minutes late. Lauren then says that some things have changed because of the trip and hands over a notebook in which she wrote down everything that happened after she got into the time machine, helping Jamie understand her new life. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.